Well, hi, Dan. So as we're talking today, Thursday, April 3rd, we're 2 days away from Saturday's local government city of Vancouver by-election. And these by-elections often attract very little attention. And it's difficult this time around because, of course, it's overshadowed by a federal election that's underway. But there are two seats at stake here. And
Yes.
you've been writing this week about the fact that there is a by-election and some of the folks who are running. So maybe you could give our viewers a bit of a snapshot here, 2 days out.
Yeah. So as you say, it's by-election. By-elections typically, I mean, municipal elections in general typically have lower turnout than
Right.
provincial and federal elections, and then by-elections have even lower turnout than that. However, this year's by-election, Vancouver by-election, despite, as you say, being overshadowed by the federal election, there was an interesting surge in advance voting. So the first day of advance voting for this by-election, they had almost I think it was a 45% increase in the number of ballots cast compared with the first day of advance voting in the last civic by-election, which was back in 2017. 2017, you might recall, was kind of the tail end of the Vision Vancouver reign in they had been in power for at that point for almost a decade, and some people said at that time that that by-election was kind of a referendum on Vision's time. They obviously were very popular. They were re-elected twice with three consecutive council supermajorities. But like any time the party's in power for a certain amount of time, by that time people had kind of gotten sick or had enough grievances or frustrations with Vision that they were voted out. They lost badly in that 2017 by-election. Vision's own candidate, I remember, used the word referendum to me, saying that, oh, this by-election is like a referendum on the direction of the city. He said that himself. And then I think he ended up finishing fourth or fifth. And then Vision, the following year in the general election, was completely wiped from council. And then, of course, they haven't been on council since. So anyway, like I say, this year there was a 45% increase compared with the first day of advance voting in the last by-election. So I think the opposition parties, all the parties that are not ABC, ABC has a majority on council. The other parties, I think, are going to be hoping that, well, this big increase in, voter turnout, again, it's all relative, but a relatively higher voter turnout compared with other by-elections, they'll be hoping that maybe represents an appetite for change. Voters maybe are motivated to get out and express their displeasure with ABC and Ken Sim and the way they've run the city for the last 2.5 years. That is obviously what the opposition parties are going to be kind of hoping is the case. But that remains to be seen. ABC is going to have a pretty significant advantage in this by-election in terms of money and organization and visibility. I mean, in the last general election in 2022, ABC was very successful in raising money and in drawing supporters, and they spent more money. For this recent column I had this week, I went back and looked at the financial disclosures. In the 2022 election, ABC spent more than double what the other four parties that they're running against now, Cope, One City, the Greens, and Team. ABC spent more than double those four parties combined in the last election. I don't know exactly what the spending is going to look like this time around, but we can expect that ABC will still have a considerable, financial advantage. And of course, they're visible. They've got signs all over town, and people know who they are. They know who Ken Sim is, and so visibility and getting out the vote will matter a lot. But
So what is, with any election, I always try to think through on both sides or many sides in this case, what are the motivation? If I'm an ABC voter, what is motivating me to get out to vote in this by-election?
yeah, good question. I mean, if you're an ABC voter, I guess it's, just supporting the team. If you're happy with changes, though, if you're happy with kind of the direction the city is on, since, ABC defeated Kennedy Stewart and took over, if you're kind of happy with the general direction and you think they kind of deserve this additional show of support. Now, of course, ABC it's kind of an interesting position where they're not losing anything. They got elect like they're kind of playing with house money. They can only gain seats here. The two
Right.
seats that are up for grabs were previously held by a councillor representing the Greens and a councillor representing one city. So those two parties are obviously very motivated to get those seats back.
Right.
ABC can only gain, right? They've got nothing to lose really, but they seem quite motivated. The party
Well,
seems
the
very
party is.
motivated to
Yeah.
get
I
those
think,
additional seats.
yeah, I just think their challenge is going to get to motivate those people who are like, well, like you said,
Yeah.
it's not going to change. It's still going to be a super majority for ABC. Now, there have been some wobbles even within that majority. So
Yes.
there's still the potential there
Yeah.
for trouble down the road.
Yeah. So that's and, they say there's a couple things, conventional wisdom about by-elections is that it's harder for incumbents because it's such a small pool of people who turn out to vote, and it's people who are motivated, who want change, that are extra motivated to actually get out and vote. So
Right.
that kind of it's harder for incumbents in by-elections. Is kind of this conventional wisdom. However, that is kind of countered in this case by the fact that ABC, I think, will have, as we say, more visibility, more organization. They've got lists and data, and they know who their voters are. They're going to be targeting these people, and they're spending more money. So how that comes out in the wash remains to be seen. But as you say, there have been wobbles within ABC. The first year that ABC was in power, they voted as a bloc all together on almost everything. Big things like the budget, big campaign promises, even everything, little small amendments, and they voted together on almost everything for the first year. In their second year in power, there were some dissensions. There were some votes where one or two ABC members might vote against the rest of the party. And then there was one really noteworthy case where three members of the party voted against their colleagues, which was enough to basically to defeat this measure that the mayor and the other ABC caucus members were trying to get over the line, which was reversing the city's ban on natural gas heating in new buildings. And so that specific vote is something that if you talk to Green and One City supporters and their candidates, that vote is something that they point to, as well as COPE, I should say. They point to that natural gas vote as here's what's at stake with this election. So it's true. No, there's no outcome this weekend that could take away ABC's majority. However, if you look at last summer's natural gas vote, it shows that on certain kinds of votes, on certain things, the left-wing progressive kind of council members believe that they might be able to work with the more kind of progressive leaning side of the ABC caucus to get them to vote against their fellow party members on certain things. And that's what, the One City council candidate, Lucy Maloney, said to me. She's like, I know we're not going to be able to do it every time, but on certain votes, if we do get two progressive councillors in there to replace the two that left, it might be possible to get more outcomes like that natural gas vote that didn't go the way that most of the ABC councillors and the mayor wanted. So she's saying that if on the other hand, One City and Green and COPE and even Team fail to get anyone elected and ABC gets two more votes on council, it's much less likely that's going to happen, right?
Right. And three being the key number, because again, I don't like doing math when we're live here, but we're talking about if these two seats do go to opposition parties, it becomes an 8-3 vote on council, the mayor plus 10 councillors, 8-3. Is that right?
No.
And then so if three
No.
of them,
it was 8-3. So it was 8-3 at on election day 2022, and for the first
right.
2.5 years of this term.
Well, that's what I mean. If these two seats stay with opposition, it would
if
be,
they stay with opposition,
it'll be
the thing is,
8-3.
the math changed about a month and a half ago when ABC kicked Rebecca Bly out of the caucus. So now you have one independent. So if let's say hypothetically One City gets their seat back that Christine Boyle vacated and Lucy Maloney wins, the Greens get their seat back that Adrian Carr vacated and Annette Riley wins, then you would have a 7-4. Well, you would have
7-4.
7 ABC,
Okay.
1 independent, and 2 Greens, 1 city. So
Right.
in theory,
Two.
if 1 city and the Greens get their seats back, or if Cope even gets in there, or team, which, and any of those could be possible. Who knows? ABC could, in theory, have they'll still have a majority. There's no outcome where they don't have a majority next week, but they could potentially have a slightly less of a majority than they had for their first 2 years in office. And again, that's because the party decided to kick Rebecca Bly out.
Right. I'm glad you
she's now
reminded me of that, how quickly I forget these things. So yeah, so that's right. So assuming again those 4, if it became 4, voted together, then they would need to reverse 2 rather than 3.
Yeah.
So not as steep a hill to climb, and we've seen that 3 have voted against ABC in the past. So the other opportunity for by-elections, win or lose, especially this close to the next election, which is frankly just over a year away, isn't it?
It's a year away.
Like
it's a year and a half or so. Yeah.
It's a chance for all of them to test messages and test their campaign machines and test their candidates and battle test everything. Anything you're seeing just in terms of what kind of messaging we're seeing now from ABC or the other parties that we might expect a year from now?
Yeah, I mean, from Cope, for example, Cope is the city's longest running, oldest left-wing party, but they've had very limited electoral success, since the days of Larry Campbell when he was mayor and they had a majority. They've only elected 1 councillor in the last 3 or 4 elections. So, but Cope's messaging is, as you might imagine, it's Sean Orr is their candidate. He's, a fairly well-known activist kind of in these left-wing circles. And a lot of their messaging is not only focused on ABC, but they keep using the term billionaire backers. So it's defeat Ken Sim and his billionaire backers. So it's these unelected, very wealthy people behind the scenes who have backed Ken Sim and ABC and helped them get into power, which is true. But although, to be fair, ABC's support came from a wide range of people. Some of them are very wealthy, some of them are not. They pretty demonstrably did, build a big tent coalition in 2022 and got a lot of support from different people. But Cope, again, as you might imagine, they are focused on, they're saying, Ken and his billionaire backers, the people need to come together. And 1 city and the Greens are talking about how they're talking largely about how Sim and ABC have kind of veered to the right of what they were elected on. So they've described them as, rolling back progress on the environment, like that natural gas vote we touched on. They've talked about, not delivering on all of the stuff they said they were going to deliver. Like they've hired all these extra police, but have not hired all the mental health nurses that they talked about. So that's kind of the way the Greens in 1 city have been pitching it and saying that, Sim and ABC are not delivering on everything. They're kind of focusing more, and they're kind of veered off to the right. And also both the Greens and 1 city, and well, frankly, all the other parties are trying to talk about Sim and ABC as getting distracted by things that voters didn't vote for in 2022. Voters obviously responded to ABC's platform in 2022, but some of the stuff that Sim and ABC have gotten criticism for since taking office is stuff that wasn't in their platform. Like people, like this idea of like investing some of the city's reserves in Bitcoin is, something the mayor cares about. He's really enthusiastic about Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. I don't know how it plays with voters. I genuinely don't know, but some of the opposition parties are pointing to that as an example of like the mayor being distracted by something that voters don't really want. They say. Maybe voters love that. I don't know. But that's what you're hearing from voters. They're saying, Ken Sim is spending time and effort and political capital on the stuff that people don't want. And then, Team. So Team is a newer party. They were only formed ahead of the last general election. But they've got the only candidate running who does have council experience. So Colleen Hardwick was on council from 2018 to 2022. She actually ran alongside Ken Sim when he was the NPA's mayoral candidate. He finished a close second in that race, but Colleen got elected. And then Hardwick served on council and then decided to run for mayor in 2022 instead of running for council again. She ran with this new party Team, and she finished third, but she's running for council again now. And, she's got a well-known name. She's got radio ads. She's had these pretty scathing radio ads on CKNW. You can hear them where she's and her running mate Theodore Abbott, who's a younger guy. He's quite a bit younger. He's in his 20s, and not as well known as Hardwick, obviously, but he's on some of these radio ads too, where they're kind of attacking Ken Sims' record, and they're saying he's not up to the job, and so they're really kind of attacking Sim and ABC for what they describe as not being competent, not really doing a good job. And Hardwick says, she has the experience and the knowledge to get the city on the right track. And when I spoke with her for this, just recently, last week, she is talking about 2026. She's saying we need to get a foot in the door. We need to get some people on council. We need to get some opposition pieces on the board ahead of 2026. So I said, does that mean that you plan to run for mayor next year? She didn't say no. She didn't say yes, but she's thinking about it. So she wants to get back on council, and like I say, they're organized, and Team. I mean, when you ask what's motivating people to get out and vote, Team is largely focused. I mean, they're focused on a few different things, but a lot of their focus is on the Broadway plan. So it's one specific area plan, but it's a big one. And they are trying to frame this election in some respects as a referendum on the Broadway plan. They're talking to a lot of people in the Broadway area who are afraid that they're going to get displaced when their buildings get redeveloped. And because of the timing of where we're at, City Hall says people are not going to get permanently displaced from their neighborhoods. They've got these really strong tenant protections that mean they'll be able to come back and get first right of refusal to live in a brand new unit at their old rent. City Hall is, saying that's the plan. That's the way the policy should work on paper. But it's too early to know for sure if it is going to work out that way. And a lot of people in that corridor are seeing these rezoning signs pop up all over the place, including in front of their apartment buildings in some cases, and they're really afraid. And so Team has said they are trying to motivate those people. If you're afraid or you're uncomfortable about the direction of this, get out and vote. And if you live elsewhere in the city and you're afraid that this could be coming to your neighborhood next, get out and vote. And Colleen Hardwick said to me, historically, homeowners are much, much more likely to vote than renters. But she says that she believes that they could get a surge of renters out voting, specifically because of concerns over the Broadway plan and this displacement and all of this stuff. So that's, I think, part of their strategy.
There are also, I think they would be appealing to that segment of people who are not just renters, but homeowners who live in areas that are facing significant density changes.
Sure.
And their concerns about everything from traffic to access to kids' schools, playgrounds, community centers, just the crowding, the sense of crowding without the amenities that they need.
Yeah, and I would say that group is definitely a core part of Team's support. And I would say that was like the biggest, that was kind of their core constituency, core group of support for the 2022 election, is people who were longtime residents, in most cases probably homeowners, who were uncomfortable with the direction, the city's approach, the way the city was densifying neighborhoods, the way the city was doing things, and the size, the speed that things were changing. That was kind of the core of Team Sport last time. This time around, they're, I think, trying to reach out to those people, but also, as I say, trying to get in renters who are afraid of displacement.
And so what, and then what is the messaging from ABC?
I mean, it's largely that, what you keep hearing from them is that they got elected on this 93 or 94 point platform. They've made progress on a lot of them. There's more work to do. They need to get more, strong, pragmatic, smart, talented people around the council table so they can do even more in the next year and a half and get, do more, keep going on the track that they're going on. Essentially, they're trying to make the case that crime is down, public safety has improved, things are getting better, the city is more vibrant, it's more fun, We were trying to foster a more of a business, a more friendly kind of business atmosphere. And the city's on the right track, and they just need more support to proceed with their agenda. That's, I mean, kind of the pitch is that things are going well, there's momentum, and they want more support to carry that through.
Okay.
It's kind of the pitch.
Interesting. All right. Well, again, 48 hours or a little over 48 hours from now, I guess we'll we'll know Saturday night, and then maybe we can talk about the results next week.
Yeah, I think so. Who knows what's going to happen. But one thing that's interesting, here's a piece of trivia. This election, having 2 seats up for grabs, this is the first time in more than 100 years that that's happened in Vancouver. According to the city archives, the last time there was a by-election with more than 1 council seat open was 1895, back when the city still had a ward system.
Wow.
So there were 3 aldermen were elected in a by-election in 1895. So that's the last time there was more than 1 seat up for grabs in a by-election.
Well, maybe next week you can tell us why there was 3. Anyways, no,
we don't need to know. I don't know the argument.
I do kind of want to know, right? That's a lot all at once, isn't it?
But I think, but yeah, the Vancouver Sun archives don't even go back that far. We'd have to find something else.
Right. All right. Great. Nice talking to you.
Great. Thanks, Hope.